Saudis helped Al-Qaeda. Saudis created Daesh.
We support the Syrian people. The Iranians are killing the Syrian people.
For decades, the narrative surrounding the Saudi-Iranian rivalry has been painted in stark religious colors.
Saudi Arabia's military is on high alert after deadly clashes with Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels.
Sunni Saudi Arabia, the custodian of Islam's holiest sites, locked in an eternal struggle with Shia Iran, the self-proclaimed champion of the downtrodden Shia minority. But this simplistic portrayal distorts a more complex reality, a reality most are not aware of. Prior to 1979, Iran and Saudi Arabia coexisted peacefully. Yes, their systems were vastly different, but there were really no major issues. Both were monarchies propped up by the West during the Cold War. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi of Iran, a secular modernizer, and King Khalid of Saudi Arabia, a conservative leader focused on religious authority, found common ground in regional stability. They saw the Soviet Union as a threat and partnered with the United States to counter its influence. Joint economic programs flourished, reflecting a pragmatic desire for progress. Iran, rich in oil reserves, benefited from American technology and investment, while Saudi Arabia's vast oil wealth helped finance ambitious development projects in both countries. This fragile harmony, however, wouldn't survive the Iranian conflict of 1979. The Shah, increasingly unpopular due to his authoritarian rule and perceived westernization, was overthrown by a revolution led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini.
The public of this country has spoken with an unequivocal and forceful voice that they don't want this government. Period.
This wasn't just a change in leadership, it was a seismic shift in ideology. Khomeini envisioned an Islamic republic, not just for Iran, but as a model for the entire Muslim world. His brand of Shia Islam, emphasizing social justice and a fierce anti-Western sentiment, directly challenged the Saudi monarchy's legitimacy. Khomeini's fierce rhetoric called for the overthrow of American-backed monarchs throughout the Middle East, a direct threat to Saudi Arabia's very foundation. This resonated with some in the region, particularly among the Shia minorities who often felt marginalized by Sunni-dominated governments. The attack on Mecca's Grand Mosque in 1979 by a group of Sunni extremists radicalized by Khomeini's message served as a chilling symbol of the brewing tensions.
Saudi troops have been conducting a mop-up operation there after driving out all but a handful of Muslim gunmen.
And perhaps the even bigger spark that ignited a rivalry came in the 1979 CIA report alleging Iran's intent to export its revolution to neighboring Gulf states, particularly those ruled by Sunni monarchies like Saudi Arabia. This directly challenged the Saudi view of themselves as the guardians of Islamic orthodoxy. The specter of Iranian-backed Shia uprisings threatened the stability of these Sunni-dominated governments, especially those with majority Shia populations. The seeds of rivalry were sown. Iran, under Khomeini's guidance, positioned itself as the revolutionary vanguard, exporting its ideology and supporting Shia groups across the region. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, saw itself as the defender of the Islamic orthodoxy and force against Iranian expansionism. Religion became a powerful tool, weaponized to fuel sectarian divisions and solidify their respective positions. The vast oil wealth of both nations further fueled the fire. Iran, desperate to assert its dominance and break free from Western influence, sought to control key oil routes in the Persian Gulf, directly challenging Saudi Arabia's economic and strategic interests. As history shows us, the seeds of discord sown in 1979 blossomed into a full-blown rivalry in the following decades. Many compare this particular rivalry to the Cold War, and by large, this analogy holds true. Why? Because it's a clash of ideologies, with Saudi Arabia representing Sunni Islam and Iran leading the Shia branch, similar to the US championing democracy and the USSR promoting communism. Both Iran and Saudi Arabia, harboring ambitions of leading the Muslim world, saw each other as existential threats. Religion, a powerful tool for mobilizing support, became intertwined with a complex web of geopolitics and historical grievances. Fearing the domino effect, Saudi Arabia spearheaded the formation of the Gulf Cooperation Council in 1981, a regional alliance designed to counter Iranian influence. And this has been largely successful. For some context, the GCC has pushed for a collective defense system, including a potential Middle East air defense alliance to counter Iranian drone and missile threats. Furthermore, the involvement of Iran's proxies, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Houthi rebels in Yemen, is a major concern for the GCC. They have consistently lobbied for international action against these groups and provided support to governments opposing them. These defensive moves have marked a so-called formalization of the growing rift. And then, the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1988 served as a bloody crucible for this growing rivalry. Saddam Hussein's Iraq, a secular Sunni state bordering Iran, saw the Iranian Revolution as a threat to its own regional dominance. Fearing the spread of Shia ideology and potential unrest among its Shia minority, Iraq invaded Iran in 1980. This 8-year war became a brutal proxy battle, with Saudi Arabia and the other GCC states bankrolling Iraq's war effort. Iran, on the other hand, received limited support from Syria and Libya, both with Shia populations and seen with suspicion by the West. The war's legacy remains deeply embedded in the region's psyche. Despite being a dead end on the battlefield, it devastated both Iran and Iraq, fostering resentment and mistrust. The power vacuum created by a weakened Iraq after the war became another battleground for Iranian and Saudi influence. Both sides fought for control through backing opposing factions in the subsequent power struggles with Iraq. The fall of Saddam Hussein and the 2003 US invasion further complicated the regional landscape. The United States, seeking to establish a pro-Western democracy in Iraq, inadvertently created an opportunity for Iran to expand its influence. Iran, with its long-standing ties to Iraqi Shia political parties, emerged as a major player in the new Iraqi government.
We do not want people to rush into something that could have disastrous consequences. Do you know what will happen the day after?
This alarmed Saudi Arabia, who viewed a Shia-led Iraq as an Iranian puppet state, tilting the regional balance of power further in Tehran's favor. This fear of Iranian dominance has since fueled proxy wars across the Middle East. In Yemen, a complex civil war pits a Saudi-backed Sunni government against Houthi rebels who receive support from Iran. In Syria, the brutal civil war has seen Iran backing the Assad regime, while Saudi Arabia supports various rebel factions. Even in Lebanon, sectarian tensions, long simmering, have been exacerbated by the Saudi-Iranian rivalry. These proxy wars have had devastating consequences. Countless lives have been lost, entire regions destabilized, and sectarian hatred deepened. The humanitarian toll is immense, with millions displaced and facing food insecurity. The refugee crisis spilling over from these conflicts has destabilized neighboring countries and further strained regional and international security. The devastating human cost and regional instability brought by the proxy wars has finally nudged both Iran and Saudi Arabia towards a cautious cooling off period. Surprisingly, China emerged as a major player in the region, forging strong economic ties with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. China, with its own strategic interests in the Middle East, saw potential benefits in mediating a thaw between the two rivals. This glimmer of hope emerged in March 2023. After years of severed ties, China played a key role in facilitating an agreement between the regional rivals. This resulted in a three-way joint statement announcing the resumption of diplomatic relations between Riyadh and Tehran. The agreement included reopening embassies, facilitating official visits, and easing visa restrictions. This marked a significant step away from the hostility that had defined their relationship for decades.
Iran and Saudi Arabia have agreed to re-establish diplomatic relations. The surprise agreement was brokered by China, which hailed it as a victory for dialogue and peace.
Analysts believe several factors contributed to this shift. The US, once a dominant regional security player, appeared less engaged, creating a strategic vacuum. China, with its growing economic clout, might have seen an opportunity to establish itself as a mediator. Saudi Arabia, potentially wary of this, could have viewed rapprochement with Iran as a way to maintain regional balance. However, the path to lasting peace remains uncertain. Deep-seated mistrust and unresolved issues like the ongoing proxy wars in Yemen and Syria continue to be hurdles. The ideological differences between the two nations haven't disappeared either. Reports emerged suggesting Iran agreed to halt weapons shipments to the Houthis in Yemen. However, this commitment wasn't officially included in the joint statement between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and China. The deal might have been a strategic move for Iran, showcasing its willingness to China to be a stabilizing force in the Middle East. This is a noteworthy development, considering Iran's past involvement in regional conflicts. China, a major oil importer for both Iran and Saudi Arabia, has a vested interest in a peaceful Persian Gulf to ensure the smooth flow of oil and trade. Despite these challenges, the March 2023 agreement was a significant milestone. The reopening of diplomatic channels allows for dialogue, a crucial step towards addressing regional issues. Whether this translates into lasting peace depends on the willingness of both sides to move beyond historical grievances and prioritize regional stability. Of course, this was a significant development. Several factors motivated Saudi Arabia's willingness to engage. One of the reasons was the perceived American withdrawal from the region, creating a strategic vacuum that China was eager to fill. Saudi Arabia, aware of the growing Chinese influence in their backyard, might have seen improved relations with Iran as a way to hedge against China's rising power. Another issue was the economic isolation of Iran, a consequence of US sanctions. This actually proved less effective than anticipated. Iran, with its vast oil reserves, remained a significant player in the global energy market. Saudi Arabia, facing its own economic challenges due to the fluctuating oil prices, might have seen potential economic benefits in normalizing relations with Iran. And finally, the brutal war in Yemen had become a costly issue. Saudi Arabia, facing international condemnation for civilian casualties, might have seen de-escalation with Iran as a way to extract itself from the conflict. However, the path to reconciliation remains fraught with challenges. Deep-seated mistrust and unresolved regional issues continue to cast a long shadow. The ongoing proxy wars in Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon remain thorny obstacles. The ideological differences between a theocratic Iran and a conservative Sunni monarchy also haven't disappeared. The recent attacks by Yemeni Houthi rebels, believed to be backed by Iran, on Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea highlight the combustible nature of the region. On top of that, while not directly involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Iran's support for Hamas, a Palestinian militant group considered a terrorist organization by the US and Israel, further complicates the picture.
We are very hopeful that the normalization of Iran is beyond the relationship with Saudi Arabia. We're optimistic. It's to our advantage on all fronts.
The Middle East simmers with conflict, and both Saudi Arabia and Iran fear getting caught in the flames. Despite recently mending fences, their allies and goals constantly clash, raising doubts about a real easing of tensions in the near future.